Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. This is The Next Reel, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that there is Andy Nelson.
Hey, hey, hey.
And we spoil movies. Tonight on the show, a conversation so controversial that our very podcast host is likely to disavow us ever existing. It's the third in our Melissa Mathison, the screenwriter series, with her 1997 film, Kundun. Before we get into that, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com. Subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app or follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel.
And if you're a regular listener of the show and you're interested in supporting our ongoing work investigating great film, please consider a regular donation through our Patreon page at patreon.com/thenextreel. And with that,
we got a Blot Spot, Andy.
Yes, we do.
And Lot, friend of the show, is written in with his rebound on E.T., the extraterrestrial.
Instead of a traditional blot spot, here's my history with E.T. Saw it as a kid, equals I hated it. The alien terrified me. The film was like a horror movie, and I never wanted to see E.T.'s face again. Saw it about a year ago, equals I was no longer afraid, but kind of underwhelmed. Seemed to lack a good plot. Saw it for the next reel, equals I finally experienced the magic. Thanks for making me watch it again, because I now see what everyone else saw 35 years ago. Your rank 7, my rank 31.
Oh, that's awesome. That's like a little next reel gift. and I should say, the conversation, I have been crazy busy and have yet to respond to the conversation that's going on in the Slack group for Patreon subscribers. But it is great. And oh my goodness, so much Reese's Pieces controversy. I never thought I would live to see such Reese's Pieces controversy.
Good times.
It is time. Let's do trailers. My trailer, Andy, I'm going to go first because I am all about childlike whimsy.
Yes, you are.
What do you think about that?
I think that's a beautiful thing.
Oh, it's so beautiful. I've got Goodbye, Christopher Robin. I almost picked Flatliners. I am so glad I did not, because this is a sweet and adorable behind-the-scenes look at the life of author A.A. Milne and the creation of Winnie the Pooh, inspired by his son. It is beautiful. The trailer is wonderful. It stars Domhnall Gleeson and Margot Robbie as the parents, and a number of different little Christopher Robins, but my goodness, is he adorable. It is directed by Simon Curtis, written by Frank Cottrell Boyce and Simon Vaughn, and we should say of Frank Cottrell Boyce, at least, he's got quite a list of credits, like Code 46. I'm a big fan of Code 46, loved that one. Anyway, you look at his list of credits, you see he's a guy who he's got a pretty good scribe. This Frank Cottrell Boyce. In fact, his IMDb bio actually says he is, quote, one of the most respected screenwriters working in the English film industry. So take that and do with it what you will. It's adorable, it's sweet, it's charming, and it's going to make a fantastic double feature with Saving Mr. Banks. What do you think?
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, the whole world that he created with Winnie the Pooh and friends. I mean, it's a magical world. It's one that Disney kind of did their own magic with, but I always also enjoyed Milne's world and just the way that the stories unfold. It's just very easy, very pleasant. They're fun to read with the kids, and getting a little bit of a biopic with him, I think, will be an interesting thing to look at. So I'm excited for this one, and I don't know. I guess it's just one of those cute things. I hope I enjoy it more than I liked Finding Neverland, which really kind of left me flat, even though everyone else seemed to love it. But this one, I hope that I really click with.
It opens in the UK September 29th, US October 13th, and Australia November 23rd, 2017. Those are all the release dates we know, and that's my trailer.
Well, I like how you took the high road, and you, instead of Flatliners, went with this one.
I did.
I instead chose to take the low road.
You did.
I was going to pick something really pleasant, like Bigsby Bear or something, which maybe I'll talk about next week. But instead, I opted to talk about Happy Death Day.
Oh, Andy.
That's right. A oh-so-clever take on Happy Birthday. Instead, it's Happy Death Day. It's actually a pretty terrible title, but it was one of those trailers that I saw the name of it. I'm like, oh, this is just going to be bad. But I couldn't help myself clicking on it anyway. And I watched it. And I have to say, as much of the story as it plays out is something that I've seen a million times in the past in many other horror movies, it had me laughing and smiling along because it's just so silly. It's basically a story of this girl who wakes up in a dorm room in a college and is trying to figure out where she is. And she kind of goes back to her day and goes to a party later that night where she gets killed. But she wakes up and she's back in the bed where she was in the morning. And it's like Groundhog Day meets Edge of Tomorrow meets, I don't know, like Final Destination or something.
Totally Scream.
Yeah. And she's reliving the same day over and over again, trying to figure out who is killing her and why. And maybe throw a little bit of the, what's the Jake Gyllenhaal movie? Source Code.
Source Code. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like that. And I don't know. I don't get a sense that it's going to be anything great, but at the same time, I really enjoyed watching the trailer. I was smiling and laughing along with it. And I don't know. It's just one of those silly horror movies that's probably going to be bad, but it could be really fun. And I'm very much looking forward to it. It's written and directed by Christopher Landon, also wrote it along with Scott Lobdell. And Christopher Landon, he's a writer who's been behind a number of projects like Disturbia, which I thought was a pretty interesting film, Paranormal Activity 2, 3, 4, and the marked ones. So he kind of took over that franchise. I think he directed the last one. And then also Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse, which he wrote and directed a couple years ago. He's definitely in the genre. And, I'm really curious to see what he does. I don't know if I'm excited about any of his other credits, but this one really piques my curiosity. The cast, Jessica Roth, Israel Broussard, Ruby Modine, nobody really stands out to me. It's just kind of one of those horror casts of faces who you don't necessarily need to know. But it looked like fun. What'd you think?
Andy, surprising everyone, I'm excited about this movie. Surprising everyone. I was just like you. I was like, oh, good grief. What has he done now? What has he done now? And you went, and I think you picked a winner. This is going to be a fantastic popcorn flick, I think. It's taking Groundhog Day and Scream, this whole slasher thing, and adding this Edge of Tomorrow vengeance plot, which I really enjoyed. I think that was full of great little surprises. It's a trailer that seemed very aware of itself and what it needed to do, and I think it did just that. It described the tropes that we are all very much aware of, and it applied them and combined them and subverted them in just the right ways. I was laughing my butt off. I thought it was great. I thought it was great. I can't believe it.
Good. I know. That makes me happy, though. I'm excited. Yeah. It's going to be a crazy little film. Well, this one is going to open perfect timing, Friday the 13th in October here in the U.S. and Turkey, and then it's going to slowly roll out Singapore, Bulgaria, the UK, Sweden, Argentina, Greece, Germany, Hungary, and then finally Spain, November 17th. So over the course of a month, it's going to hit all those places and hopefully more. Looks like fun.
Well, I'm glad, Andy, because you must walk to India, Andy. We have won.
In 1937, the search for the Dalai Lama's reborn spirit led to a small village in Tibet.
This is mine.
You say this is yours? What else belongs to you? Yes, those are yours. Yes.
Kundun, Andy, the now hard to find Martin Scorsese film written by Melissa Mathison, starring a fantastic cast led by Tenzin Gyatso. That is the actor playing Dalai Lama as an adult. It is the story of discovering the 14th Dalai Lama and his maturity and growth into the Dalai Lama that we know today. What did you think?
This is a film that's kind of mesmerizing. I don't know. I don't know if it really is something that I love, but it's something that I'm really fascinated by. And when I'm watching it, it just kind of takes hold of me, and I just find it a really fascinating story. I think some of that is Scorsese's direction for sure. But also, I just think it's an interesting story of this person born as the 14th reincarnation of the Dalai Lama, and everything that kind of goes along with that, all the ceremony, just kind of the way that he is taken care of and grown and nurtured and everything, paired with the history of the area of Tibet and how China comes in and kind of takes it over. And it poses this large crisis in his life when he's a very young man, and just kind of the decisions he has to make when he's leading this country with, I suppose you could say on one side, the very little wisdom because he's just a young boy, but at the same time you could say a lot of wisdom because he's the 14th reincarnation.
Exactly, 14 generations of this guy, and he knows where all the teeth are kept.
Exactly. So it's a really interesting story, and I find it just absolutely mesmerizing. And I think Scorsese, if anyone was going to tell this story, I think Scorsese was the right man to do it, because it so fits his style of filmmaking, and everything he does here. It just feels like it's part of kind of the religion and the beliefs within it. It's a beautiful film.
Yeah, I didn't connect with the film. I had real trouble watching it. I found myself, it was beautiful in Roger Deakins' camera work. It was, I like the colors, and I found myself really attracted to the kids playing Dalai Lama, particularly through the first half of the movie as he was growing up, and I liked them, but I liked them as kid actors, and I never connected with those kids leading up to the final sort of version of the Dalai Lama that we get for the balance of the film. I never connected with them as the Dalai Lama. I was never able to get to that point of believing that this was a story about an important person and not kind of a parade of color and montage. And I was thankful, I think, for Glass's crazy score, which we can talk about later, because it was pretty much the only thing keeping me marching toward the end of the film. It was beautiful and sad in that it is about a guy, I think, and a life and a time that is important, and I wish I wasn't so bored.
Interesting. Had you seen it before, or was this your first time?
No, this was my first time.
Okay, interesting.
You? Was this first time for you?
Oh, no. I saw this many times. I was in college working at the movie theater, and this was playing. And this was one that, working as a projectionist, we would kind of watch bits and pieces of this all the time.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It could be that this is one of those films that really strikes you more when you see it on the big screen, because just everything really kind of envelops you. I don't know, but it really struck me then, and I still found that it struck me quite a bit. So
and to your point, I mean, I'm watching on a big TV on a low definition, like it was a fuzzy, effectively a terrible transfer. If I had gotten it from Amazon, I would be furious. And so it wasn't the best way to view the film. I absolutely recognize that, and so I acknowledge that. I think there's a lot to be said for that. But I do want to get to Mathison as the screenwriter, though, because so much of what we've celebrated about her so far has been about her ability to get in the heads and hearts of kids, right? And be able to allow us to put ourselves into the role of the kid as the hero. And I wanted that. I wanted to experience that in this movie. I felt like if there is any character that I would love to put my heart and head into, it's this young Dalai Lama, to experience, in some small part, the same thing that Elliot experienced as he saved E.T., the same thing that Alex experienced as he built his relationship with the Black Stallion, right? Those are things that I'm really interested in, and I wonder why I didn't get that here. I wonder if it was because we had, 3 different kid actors playing one character, leading up to our final sort of, I guess I should say, older teen, young adult Dalai Lama. I wonder if I couldn't get the emotional connection to allow me to get into the story with that character. I don't know what it was. I've really been sort of spinning on this, but the bottom line for me is this film and this script did not make the same connection that I expected to have, that I wanted to have, and that I already got from the 2 films that we've discussed previously.
That's very interesting, because I am completely on the flip side of that, where I really connected with the kid, and I felt his sense of kind of wonder at the world and all the little things that he was noticing, like the details that he would notice. I felt like Scorsese really worked at getting us into the child's point of view so often in the way that he told the story and everything. And I really appreciated that kind of as a newcomer, to the world of Buddhism and the Dalai Lama, that I really kind of got to see it through this kid's point of view, who, was kind of experiencing all this, at least in this particular reincarnation, for the first time. And so I kind of got to experience it new, like he was. And I don't know, I really appreciated that, and I kind of felt for him and his struggle with understanding stuff and wanting to get a sense of the bigger picture, but having people kind of hiding it from him because he was too young, and just dealing with things that for a lot of kids are largely out of what we would put them through. But when you're the leader of a nation and all of a sudden China invades, the things that all of a sudden he now has to be responsible for, I really connected with all of that. And I found myself really appreciating the different the different actors that they used to play each stage of the Dalai Lama as he was growing up. And I don't know, I did find that connection. And so, I mean, I agree to a certain extent, it may not be as strong as it is in some of those other films. But I guess I don't know. I felt it was still there, though.
Yeah, the more we sort of talk about it and I think about it, the more I feel like separating the actors to create this character is doing a disservice to one of Melissa Matheson's great strengths, and that is allowing us to kind of develop a stronger emotional connection with a single character, and that may be a function of the script itself, that she has chosen to write a story that takes us from essentially baby Dalai Lama, but manifested as like 4 or 5 through kind of early 20s, and showing them through different actors. We don't have the opportunity to kind of I didn't feel like I had the opportunity to really get in the head of any one of them. I felt like I was always adjusting to this new actor, and I couldn't really latch on to the story I was supposed to pay attention to. So it is interesting.
Is that something I'm struggling to think of any, but is that something you find yourself dealing with in other films where you follow a character over a period of their life and you're jumping from different actors as they age? Is that I can't think of anything off the top of my head where that happens. I know it happens plenty, though.
Yeah, I can't believe we can't quite think of another one like that right now.
I can only think of ones where it's like a big jump, like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where we start with what's his name, and jump to Harrison Ford, where you start, like that's a big jump, which is really kind of not so much, it's more timed just for kind of a flashbacky sort of thing, where as opposed to this, where it's like you're following his life and you're kind of going through a number of different points in his youth.
That's interesting. I don't...
River Phoenix. Jeez, I couldn't believe it.
I can't recall any that do that in a nuanced way off the top of my head, but I don't remember an experience of feeling like this, where it was jarring enough or kept prevented me from diving into the story as deeply. I looked at this. I think probably the old cynical vein started throbbing. You know what I mean? That I started looking at this as, and maybe as in a different light on the heels of Silence, that this felt more like a film Martin Scorsese had to make, and not one that was much more of a passion project for him, and less of a one of his stories that I typically do connect very well with. This was a stay in your lane kind of an experience for me.
Well, it's interesting looking at other biopics that he's done, right?
Yeah,
I mean, Raging Bull and Last Temptation of Christ, I guess you could say, and Goodfellas, Casino, even his more recent ones like Aviator and Wolf of Wall Street. I mean, he certainly has done plenty of biopics.
Truly.
And I guess you could say Silence also is kind of a biopic. And it's interesting how he's looked at some that were more religious, like Last Temptation of Christ and this and Silence, all very much deal with people and their faith and kind of how the challenges of their faith and its place in the world.
Yeah, devotion to a cause. I mean, it really, all of those. And in fact, Aviator, and you can kind of say the same thing, and not in terms of biopics. But the general sort of spirituality angle, it feels like now we have Scorsese's religion trilogy. You know what I mean? And this one. And I was not a fan of Last Temptation of Christ either. These films land they just feel like a blunt instrument to me, and they don't just like the story itself that they chose to tell doesn't, for me, showcase Melissa Mathison's great skill in character development and subtlety of character development. This film does not showcase what I think Scorsese is best at, and that really is it's just lost in these films when he's trying to be too nuanced. Doesn't cut it.
Interesting, because I feel like Scorsese really shines in this film, and the way that he's telling the story, the point of view of the Dalai Lama throughout the film, the way that he focuses on details and ties in just some fascinating intercuts that I really enjoy, which feel very spiritual. It feels like a real connection to the Buddhist faith with the eyes and the water and those statues and just the colors and the landscapes and just everything. And then I love how he does those amazing dissolves that are like really quick dissolves of shots that are closer and closer and closer to something. It's almost like a zoom, but it's like cut, or dissolve,
sure,
all the way to something that's really close. It's an interesting way to kind of create that world, and the way that he was playing with lighting changes when people would die, and I felt like this was a filmmaker who understands the language of cinema and loves to play around in it really at home, and just doing something really interesting that for me felt really spiritual and really connected with the faith that he was depicting.
I agree with you. There were some fascinating sort of technological or structural things going on here in his direction. All of your points are right on. I mean, I enjoyed the fascination with detail you mentioned, the close-ups, the sand. My goodness, we open and close on the sand painting that is just gorgeous. I know nothing about the use of sand as a symbol. I don't know what it represents in the film. It's there. I don't know why it's there. I don't know why it is swept up at the end. It means nothing to me, but it is beautiful, and I think that cements a lot of my perspective on what he's doing. It's beautiful and ultimately represents not a lot. It's hollow beauty, and nothing that really allowed me to latch onto it. I feel like, what you're saying, though, is a great demonstration of, the filmmaker's skill and working with Roger Deakins in making the camera do something that is interesting on screen. You're right. You're absolutely right. It is visually, in many sequences, it's visually stunning to look at. And there are some sequences, too, that highlight great violence. They're very brief, but you remember who makes the film when you see them. Some of them I don't understand exactly. I don't understand all of the delusions that the Dalai Lama is going through toward the end of the film. He sees his helpful comrades and suddenly they are slaughtered on horseback. He is standing in the courtyard.
The visions?
Yeah.
You didn't understand his visions that all those people were going to die?
Yeah, it was that whole his whole sort of the whole spirituality of like, being able to tell the future was something I didn't truck with. It was not presented in a way that I understood early enough. So by the end, I was just, what is he seeing? I actually thought at the very end, Andy, I thought that he was so gone with dehydration and exhaustion that he was seeing his helpful comrades and waving them off, and then we were flashing to what had actually already happened.
Huh.
Right?
Okay.
That's how sort of it just hit me sideways. I wasn't tracking with this film.
I wonder if it's a film that for you, like if you watch it again down the road, if things will click for you a little more, like now that you've had a chance to stew on it, if things will all of a sudden start piecing in place. I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder. It'd be a tough sell. I mean, I've watched it I watched it all yesterday, and I watched half of it again today, and it didn't lock. So I'm not like, this is not a movie that I'm interested in, that I immediately say, okay, put this on my watch list to watch again in 6 months. It's not that kind of a film for me, and it surprised me. I'm not mad. I'm just sad.
Well, I would say maybe not 6 months, but like 5 years or something. Try it again and see if it's something that you get anything else out of.
Yeah.
I think it's a really interesting film, and I don't know. I guess it's just something that I ended up clicking with a little more. But I don't know. I think that's something that's quite interesting about the film and what they're doing here. Reading some reviews of some of the critics out there, Roger Ebert and Richard Corliss, they really seem to have a connection with kind of the way that the film is structured, where it's not necessarily a film that is a plot-driven film. It's more of a poem. Richard Corliss says that Scorsese devised a poem of textures and silences, which I think was a nice way to describe it. And Ebert, same thing. He says the film's visuals and music are rich and inspiring, and like a mass by Bach or a Renaissance church painting, it exists as an aid to worship. It wants to enhance, not question. I just think there are things going on in this film that I don't know. Maybe I've seen it enough where I'm finding a way to kind of connect to it that works quite well for me. And for your first time, it just might be something that you're just, it's not there. So that's why I'm curious to see if you end up coming back to it down the road and see what you think.
I totally get that. Let's do first shot, last shot.
The first shot of the film, after we have titles, which are kind of over this black ripples in this black water, and some scroll about the history, searching and the search for the Dalai Lama, we cut to a Tibetan mountaintop, a snowy mountaintop, and with the wind blowing clouds across the top. And then we hard cut to an extreme close-up of a sand painting as the wind kind of reverse blows it away as the sand is almost like blown into place, mimicking the actual mountain.
And the last shot, we are on the now grown Dalai Lama after his escape to India. He is looking through his telescope, presumably back across the border from India at the mountains of Tibet, while probably listening to Philip Glass.
Probably. With his headphones.
He's big fan of the Lama, Glass. Big fan.
It's a beautiful pairing of imagery about the mountains and just kind of I don't know. I'm like you. I'm kind of clueless when it comes to the world of Buddhism. I don't know if the sand painting has something to do with the Buddhist religion or if it's something that just ties into the world of Tibet. I'm not really sure. But I do find it a really interesting way to kind of use that sort of sand imagery to kind of tell stories and relay their history and kind of what is, the beauty of their culture and everything. I find it really interesting. And we start with that. We start with, the mountaintop and then the sand. And then we, at the end, we are now separated from that. And now we're with the Dalai Lama in India, looking back, hoping for the day that he's able to return. I thought it was a nice little pairing.
Andy, I got to follow up on this because I feel like if we don't say this out loud, then we're gonna regret it. The sand painting is not a sand painting. It is a mandala. And that is the representation of the world in divine form, perfectly balanced, precisely designed. It is meant to reconsecrate the earth and heal its inhabitants. Right? It requires millions of pieces of sand to make it a mandala 5 by 5 feet square. It requires teams of monks working anywhere from days to weeks, depending on the size of the mandala, to create this floor plan of the sacred mansion that is life. It requires the interplay of vivid colors and ancient symbols. This is written by the wonderful Sister Joan Chittister. And I see her a number of times in Chautauqua every summer, where I'm going next week. I wonder if she will be there. And the whole story behind the mandala, like they spend so much time building this place of peace, right? Building this sense of peace and structure. Then why destroy it, Andy? Why do you think? Do you have a guess?
Because it never doesn't last, Pete.
You are right, Andy. Are you cheating?
No,
because monks don't.
Because they sweep it all up at the end.
Because literally, it does not last. No, they destroy it because, yes, underlying message of the mandala ceremony is that nothing is permanent. All things are in flux, beautiful but ephemeral, moving but temporary, a plateau but not a summit. All things are called to balance and enlightenment and the fulfillment of the divine image in them, yes, but in flux, always in flux. So thank you to Sister Joan Chittister for reaching her hand through the microphone and telling us we should really know what this thing is if we're going to keep talking about it. That is the mandala. And so does that change or cement your impression of first shot, last shot, or the use of the sand in the film?
Well, I think it's interesting because it shows the kind of, the first shot is a peaceful mountaintop, and then we cut to the mandala representation of it. And I guess it's, as beautiful as and peaceful as Tibet may be right now, it's not permanent. And it's, it very much could change, as it does when we get to the end and we see the mandala getting swept up and, broken apart. And then we see he's not there anymore. So it does make sense.
It does make sense, and it makes it all the more powerful when he takes the sand and he goes out. Was he in India or just outside when he pours it into the water?
I'm not sure if we knew where that was. It looked like one of the places that they cross on all those stones, but I'm not exactly sure if it's the same place or not.
Yeah, wherever he was, it makes that whole experience, I think, more meaningful. Kind of understanding why it was destroyed in the first place, that his time in that place was done in flux.
One, holy cow, whose job is it to separate all the sand, the grains of sand, now that I assume that they just mix it all up and dump it out and start over.
Yeah, they start over, yeah.
But, okay, so then here's my question. Earlier in the film, or I should say midway through the film, Dad dies. The Dalai Lama's father dies. They have the weirdest funeral I've ever seen, where they take him out to the boonies, and he's kind of like a mummy all wrapped up. They unwrap him, chop him up. They feed his body to the buzzards, or to all the vultures flying around. And then, was it just me, or do they scrape some of his blood and bones and meat and stuff into a pot and put some sand in that? Like, are they actually staining sand? Is that how they get some of the red sand?
I saw that too. My interpretation was the same. And good Lord, sand. Yes, that's what I saw. That seems something that is not culturally in line with what we do. Now, I do the vulture thing. We definitely do the vulture thing, but we don't stain sand with the blood of our fallen family. We don't do that in our family. No, that is an interesting part of the ceremony. That's what I walked away with, but it doesn't feel like there was a clear answer to that for me.
It was pretty
clear,
eye-opening.
It was eye-opening. It was clear. You should take a clip of just that and send it to your dad and just say FYI.
FYI for the future.
I tell you, I've discovered a love of sand. We'll see what happens. Let's talk about the cast. Casting by Ahmed Abunuam and Ellen Lewis. They brought us. I think my favorite, Tenzin Gyatso as age 15 Dalai Lama.
He's kind of age 15 through 25. He's kind of the last 10 years of our story, from the time China invades to the time he has to flee.
Right.
And I think he's great. He's actually the grandnephew of the Dalai Lama, which I thought was quite interesting. None of these people, this was something that was kind of big at the time. They cast this with all non-actors, with real Tibetans who I don't know. I guess they just wanted to be a part of this project about the Dalai Lama and tell this story. And for a cast of non-actors, I was just really impressed with what Scorsese and team got out of them. I mean, there were a few times where I could tell that they kind of did some ADR and replaced some dialogue, but for the most part, I was like, they did a really great job of performing in here.
Yeah, I think so too. I think this guy Sarong exudes the kind of peace that I sort of have internalized as the Dalai Lama, right? And I think that's he was just terrific. As much as I didn't connect with the film, I thought his performance was really, really great. He was fun to watch.
It was to that point, I felt every ounce of pain that he felt when he heard those bits of news that caused him so much pain that he like clutched his chest and doubled over.
Yeah.
One time when he was learning about how the Chinese were, killing villagers and having the kids kill the parents, just horrible, absolutely horrible stuff. And just the way that he reacted, I mean, I completely was there with him. I felt all that pain. It was a pretty powerful performance that he delivered here.
Yeah, absolutely. The other Dalai Lama, the kids, Guryum Tethong and Tulku Jamyang Kunga Tenzin, were the age 12 and age 5 Dalai Lamas. Also cute, great kids. Again, to your point about non-actors, they got great performances out of these guys.
Yeah, and there's the 2-year-old too, who's kind of my favorite little face, the Tenzin Gyatso Paichang.
That's right.
Who he's just stinking adorable when he's picking all the things. Mine. He's just so cute. Just a great set of faces to play the Dalai Lama. I connected with every version of him. I really liked this group.
Tencho Gyalpo as mom.
And she was the niece of the Dalai Lama. I think it's interesting that they cast a few of his kind of family members. She was very tender, and I liked just the what she brought to the role. And as far as the emotional connection, I thought it was very interesting to see him going from somebody who is kind of really connected to his mom, and then to that point when he's just like, "Oh, mother, there's you need to leave. There's no women in the monastery after dark," just kind of kicking his mom out.
Right. Sewang Migyur Kangsar as the dad. I thought the dad was charming, and he felt like somebody I have seen before, and I couldn't place it, but he was a face that became a face of somebody that I know, like familiar, like collegial, like somebody that I've seen in other films. I have not seen him in other films. I thought he was very charismatic on screen.
Yeah, I think they all are. Redding, I really enjoyed Redding, played by Sonam Puntsak.
Robert Lin played Mao Zedong.
Robert Lin he's kind of, he's not a huge actor, but he is kind of one of those Chinese actors who has been in a number of Hollywood films, kind of playing the Chinese guy or whatever, and it's kind of, I don't know if it speaks well.
I don't think he's played Mao more than once.
No, I looked in his credits. This was the only time he played Mao, but I thought he did a really good job of playing Mao.
Oh, I did too.
I did too. Just really, and just the way that he delivers lines like "religion is poison." It's like,
it's the opiate of the people.
Yeah.
Oh, it was great. And you look at him, what they did to him and his makeup and his hair. My goodness, his hair. Once you take the portrait of Chairman Mao and you make it a 3-dimensional human, it's a whole different look. It's a whole different thing. Anybody else you want to talk about?
It's a cast of people who aren't actors, and they're Tibetan to boot. So I have a hard time with their names, and I don't fully. I don't really. I don't have a lot to say about anyone individual. I thought they all did great jobs.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about getting it made. It's actually, I think it's an interesting story, and it starts with Melissa Mathison.
As somebody who ended up kind of becoming Buddhist herself, she was really fascinated with the life of the Dalai Lama, and she asked him permission to write about his life. And he gave her permission, and they did a lot of interviews, and it was kind of the birth of this script, which is, I think, really fascinating.
And she's the one who initially suggested that Scorsese come on board.
Yeah, which, I think that's a pretty interesting way to have this unfold, where it kind of goes from her as the writer and eventually co-producer on the film, and bringing the Dalai Lama on board to tell this story, and then leading to Scorsese, which I think is pretty cool. And it's actually, a side note, this is Scorsese's first movie that was a PG-13 film.
Again, don't you ever, did you find yourself wondering, and I know it's because of the proximity with which we just watched E.T. and the Black Stallion, but don't you find, didn't you at any point think to yourself, I wonder what this movie would have been like if Spielberg had directed it?
Nope. That's not something that ever crossed my mind.
That crossed my mind a lot. A lot.
Interesting.
I think you should watch it again and think about Spielberg.
This totally doesn't seem like a Spielberg sort of story. Like I can't wrap my head around Spielberg telling this story.
Really?
Uh-uh.
That's another show in itself, clearly. But so this was shopped around a bunch. Universal turned it down. China was very much against this movie. And there you go. Disney takes it, releases it anyway, and now you can't find it anywhere. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, China was so... I mean, the story is about China kind of taking back Tibet, which they said was theirs, but Tibetan people says, no, it's not. And it was this whole battle about this place. And the film depicts that, and it depicts Chairman Mao and his take on it and what the Chinese did. So it's not something that China was very excited to have depicted. And they told Disney, when Disney said we're going to distribute this, they threatened Disney's access to China as a future market for their film releases, which was really interesting. They just didn't back down, though, and they still released it under their Touchstone label. I was a little surprised by that. For some reason, I kind of felt like this would have fallen under their Miramax label. To put it under Touchstone seems kind of a strange one. But China was very upset at Disney for that and the people involved. And China banned for life Scorsese, Melissa Mathison, and several other members of the production from ever entering China as a result of making this film. Eventually, it sounds like China did lift the ban, but they were pretty upset. And what I think is so interesting is that Disney was very, very keen on opening a Disneyland theme park in China. And it actually took them to apologize for releasing this film in order for China to allow them to open Shanghai Disneyland last year.
That, sir, is how you hold a grudge.
Yes, it is. You must apologize.
Apologize? So interesting.
And this is why this is why it's nowhere. That's why it's so hard to find.
Most of the original copies, I think, are buried with E.T. the video game in the middle of the desert.
Yeah, I can't believe we didn't talk about that crazy thing. But yes.
No kidding. So, okay. Well, so here it is. You can find it at your library. Go watch it. Cinematography, Roger Deakins.
Beautiful cinematography. I really love it. Deakins actually said that he thinks that Scorsese wanted him to be involved because of his documentary experience that he had, and that he, because it was a cast of non-actors, he thought that Scorsese felt Deakins would have an ability to kind of sense when a scene would end and when the actor finished a take, and kind of have a better sense as to when to shoot and cut and everything. Which is kind of an interesting take on that. I didn't think of that as a reason, but I guess I can see it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's I some of the reading I've done on this says that this is one of his very, very best films. Do you agree with that? Is this one of his standout performances as cinematographer?
When you look at some of the other stuff that he's done...
This was right between Courage Under Fire and The Big Lebowski, but he'd already done Dead Man Walking and Shawshank and Hudsucker. That's we've talked about him there. Barton Fink, we talked about him there again. So he did, he's got a number of films under it. I just don't... I feel like this was great and lovely, and it did some creative things, but I think he's got an awful lot of credits that are real standout performances.
I agree, but I mean, I do feel like the cinematography in this, him working with Scorsese, I think they take it to another level, and I think this is, I would agree that this is probably some of the finest cinematography out there. It's just, it really, for me, it's an incredibly stunning tour de force of the way that a camera can capture a story. So I'm on the side of those who say it is one of his best.
Andy, I used the exact same words to describe his work on Hail Caesar, and if I recall, you disagreed. Tour de force.
That movie was garbage. Garbage. I mean, but looking at his list, I mean, he has films. I mean, Sid and Nancy, early on in his career, that was a stunningly beautiful film. I loved that. And you're right. He's done a lot of really gorgeous stuff. The stuff that he's done with the Coen brothers, looking at how he started developing kind of the way that you could modify the color palette in the digital world with Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? I just think, everything that he's done has been really stunning. And certainly the stuff that he's been doing with Denis Villeneuve has just been gorgeous. I think he's done tons of beautiful stuff, but I think that pairing that with the way that the story is told and the way that it ties into the story, I think maybe that's why I feel that it's one of his best, because I feel it taps into the spirituality within the context of the film.
Everything you just said, I would apply to The Assassination of Jesse James by Coward Robert Ford, and it wasn't boring.
It has nothing to do with cinematography.
Sure it does. It's which I would say is equally beautiful. I think it's a beautiful film.
I agree.
Yeah, and I think it really celebrates his work, and I can sit through it. I think those two things are inextricably linked. Production design of this film was quite lovely. I will say, puts us
but
right
it's boring.
there. It is boring. It's boring if it's not moving, and there's not a lot of moving. Dante Ferretti is behind production design and costumes. Franco Saraolo, art direction. Massimo Razzi, art direction. Alan Tompkins, supervising art director, and Francesca Lo Schiavo, set decoration. I say all those names because we should note it was not filmed in Tibet, and yet I felt like I was in Tibet.
It is it's a brilliant world that these guys construct. Because I agree, I kept going. I feel like this whole thing was like secretly filmed in Tibet. It's like
totally
that convincing. It really blows me away. But no, these Dante Ferretti. I mean, he's been behind many, many beautiful things. Certainly does a standout job here. Creating this world, which was shot in Morocco and some stuff in Woodstock and British Columbia, Idaho, Rome, New Delhi, all over the place. I mean, it's amazing how they make all of this feel like we are actually in Tibet.
Longtime collaborator Thelma Schoonmaker edited the film.
Thelma and Scorsese, I think, have an incredible shorthand of how they tell stories. And a lot of what I give credit to as far as Scorsese and how he does those beautiful dissolves getting closer and closer and closer, and the way that he's cutting the visions, and there's so much of that. I think really also you have to give credit to Thelma for the way that she plays around with that and understands so intrinsically, I think, what Scorsese is going for, that she's able to cut it in a way where it really feels like a Scorsese film.
Absolutely. I think the elements that felt the most Scorsese feel Scorsese because of the way that they are constructed. They're literally constructed. And those are the sections toward the second half of the film that really start playing with cut and time. And that I think it's what gets me back into the film. I lament a little bit the closing. It's essentially his march across Tibet to India is, I minimize it by calling it the 18-minute montage of exhaustion, right? I mean, it's not really. It's a hard journey, but it happens. It takes 18 minutes. It's a little bit long. It's a lot of Philip Glass, but the pieces of that are most interesting to me are the pieces that are edited and paced with great vibrance and intention, and it's a wake up. It's a wake up to the use of editing in service of pace. I really like that stuff, but she's great.
Yeah, it's interesting. I really, again, going back to my point, I think that it will be an interesting one for you to look at later down the road. I think there are so many things that she's doing in here, paired with Scorsese, that make it a film worth revisiting, even if it is, 5-10 years down the road. I think it's definitely something that might be an interesting revisit for you.
I'll put it on my calendar.
There you go. I'm gonna be calling you in 10 years. Check.
Are you kidding? We'll be here.
That's right.
Philip Glass did the score.
This was my. I had seen. He had done the Koyaanisqatsi, that trilogy, which has a name and I can't remember what it is, but Koyaanisqatsi and Powakatsi and whatever the third one's called.
Yeah.
Other than that, I really knew nothing of Philip Glass. And this was, to a large extent, my entry into getting a sense of who he was and kind of what his music was like. I really enjoyed the score. I kind of love how it fit with the context of the film. I really loved it. I didn't realize that watching other movies down the road with Philip Glass, that it really is just his style and it's how all of his music sounds, which I certainly have kind of grown to understand and appreciate, but I don't necessarily like as many of his later scores as much as I like Kundun.
You know, this is not a score that I find I can listen to. I think your commentary is funny that this is just his style. It's as if, Scorsese said, "Hey, you're a Buddhist, right? Like, do you have any extra like rack music you can throw at us?" And he just gave him some stuff from the glass vault and just included it. It fits so well. It really is him. I don't find it a terribly listenable score. There are a few tracks on it that are super beautiful and meditative, and there's a lot of banging, and it really fits the film. It fits what I expect of Glass, and that's about where my connection to it ends. The final theme, the final presentation of the theme as he crosses the border and we close out the film, I think is stunningly gorgeous. It is a high point of the movie, and not, I know you're thinking, just because it's the end.
I'm a big fan of the score, and I find it incredibly listenable, but that's just me. This is something that I think is just very relaxing and peaceful to listen to. I really, really love it. So what are you going to do?
Exactly, Andy. You're going to tell me how it did at award season.
Surprising, considering China was, giving so much hate and vitriol to anybody who said anything positive about it or released it. It still managed to get seven wins and 12 other nominations in the award season. As far as the Oscars go, we talked about the cinematography. Well, it did get a nomination for cinematography, lost to Russell Carpenter for Titanic. Art direction, set decoration also lost to Peter Lamont and Michael Ford for Titanic. Costume design, another Dante Ferretti. He lost to Deborah Lynn Scott for Titanic. And dramatic score got a nomination, but Philip Glass lost to James Horner, also for Titanic. This was the year that the ocean liner pretty much sank everybody else. It did get some other nominations and wins. They all seemed to focus on cinematography and the score primarily. There were some other ones for Scorsese and stuff. Nothing for Melissa Mathison, so I guess other people didn't connect with the script like you didn't connect with the script.
Yeah, nothing for Mathison, and I don't know. It feels sadly redemptive. I take no joy in that because she's just a super talented person, and she was a super talented person, and even though I didn't connect with it, doesn't mean it wasn't worth noting. I am clearly in the minority. Certainly, judging by the reviews, I am in the minority. So
it's interesting, though, looking at her career. I mean, she didn't have many scripts that she did. I mean, The Black Stallion, E.T., The Escape Artist. She did one segment of Twilight Zone, the movie. This was all like 79 to 82.
Right.
And then she didn't have anything until 95 with The Indian in the Cupboard.
Right.
Followed by Kundun. And then The BFG, which was posthumously, she had written it and Spielberg posthumously made it last year. So not a lot of feature credits for her. It's kind of a shame.
What was your thought of this related to 7 Years in Tibet?
This came out a few months after 7 Years in Tibet. This was kind of that whole Hollywood doing this weird trend at the time where, they had two asteroid films, asteroids hurtling toward the Earth and mankind had to stop it. And they had a couple of those and it was weird. And this was one of them, where 7 Years in Tibet and then Kundun. 7 Years in Tibet, for me, really felt like, Hollywood people saying, well, we can't make a movie about Tibetans because Americans aren't just not going to like it. So let's make sure we're telling a story about a white man who's over there in Tibet. And that way we can get, Americans to go see the movie. it just felt very forced, that particular story. Even if it is a real story that happened, it just felt like, the typical American way to go about telling a story of the Dalai Lama. And so I really didn't care for that film. This film, on the other hand, I felt much more connected to. I felt like it really worked at placing itself in the Tibetan culture and in the world of the Dalai Lama. So I personally had much more respect for this particular telling of these Tibetan stories.
Well, Brad Pitt was also banned from China, if that makes you feel any better.
Yeah, right. And eventually lifted. I wonder if Brad Pitt and Martin Scorsese had to apologize also.
I kind of want to know that, right?
And if they had to apologize and say, we'll come help build Disneyland.
Right. Because we know Brad Pitt's been back to China.
That's right.
How'd it do in the box office?
Well, Scorsese, considering this was a movie that, people were struggling trying to get them off the ground, he still got a budget of $28 million to tell this story of the Dalai Lama.
It's called the ironic budget of austerity in Tibet.
Yeah, exactly. It seems like a pretty healthy budget for a story that likely seems like one that would have a hard time finding an audience. As an investor, I would have gone, really? You think you're going to make money off of that? Touchstone did give it a limited 2-screen release on Christmas Day, 1997, along with the glut of other holiday releases that came out in that period. As Good as It Gets, Afterglow, Ma Vie en Rose, An American Werewolf in Paris, Jackie Brown, Mr. Magoo, The Postman, The Education of Little Tree, Wag the Dog, and The Winter Guest. Yes, it was a very heavy Christmas release day. Considering all of these movies were released just 1 week after Titanic opened, though, it's safe to say they all drowned a bit at the box office. Kundun had a wider release on January 16th, but that didn't help boost its popularity, especially since Disney was not pushing it. It went on to only make $5,686,694 at the domestic box office, or $8.5 million in today's dollars. Doesn't look like it had any international releases as far as I could tell, probably due to the controversy with the Chinese government. Unfortunately, this means Scorsese's film had an adjusted loss per finished minute of $261,484.
Adjusted loss per finished minute, the ALPFM.
That's right.
God, I love your acronyms. I love them so much. We should probably head right over, Andy, and rank it.
We should. Let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel or swipe over in your show notes and you'll see a link for Kundun right in Flickchart. It'll take you over there and you can add it to your gallery and we'll see how it stands up next to our list. What's first?
All right, first up we have Kundun or Hot Fuzz.
Hot Fuzz.
I'm going to have to go with Hot Fuzz. Sorry, Dalai Lama. Now I have guilt.
Yeah, that's good. Tibetan guilt. I don't think that's a thing.
I will say the Dalai Lama seems like an awfully fun guy, though.
Yeah.
I just have a sense that he enjoys himself and enjoys life. And I have a feeling he would appreciate Hot Fuzz.
I think he would, too.
Kundun or Atlantic City, the Louis Mall. I'm going to say Kundun.
I'm predictably Atlantic City.
Okay, well, let's do it.
Are you ready?
Yep.
1, 2, 3. Rock, paper, scissors.
Rock.
I guess I was a little predictable.
I'm just going to go rock, paper, scissors over and over again.
Yeah, I just do it over and over and see when they line up.
Okay, Kundun takes that one then. Kundun or Gremlins? Gremlins, please.
Yep.
Kundun or The Thin Man?
The Thin Man.
I'm going to say Kundun.
All right, here we go.
I'm pretty flexible on this one, though.
I am not.
I appreciate that. I'm just thinking about this a little bit. It was a fun film. I'll give you The Thin Man. It was a really enjoyable watch.
It was an enjoyable watch. Thank you.
Kundun or Alice doesn't live here anymore. Oh, a little Scorsese battle. I'm going to say Kundun.
Interestingly, I think I am flexible. I will give this to you. I would say Alice naturally because, Christopherson, but I'm going to give this to you.
Kundun or Village of the Damned? I'm going with Kundun.
I think I'm Village of the Damned.
Okay.
Here we go.
Let's do it.
1, 2, 3. Paper, scissors.
Paper.
There we go. Oh, I like this. I like the way this works. Yeah.
I tried tricking you. Kundun or Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist?
Oh, definitely Nick and Nora.
I'll go with Nick and Nora.
Yes.
Kundun or Splash?
Splash.
You know which way I'm going.
Please.
Definitely Splash. It's a Tom Hanks thing. What can I say? Kundun or The Illusionist? I'm going with Kundun.
The Illusionist.
I had too many problems with Paul Giamatti's cop character in The Illusionist. It just got, the more I thought about it, it just got so silly.
The marbles in his mouth, was that part of it?
Frustrating. No, it's just you know, the way that he, at the end of it, he just kind of laughs the whole thing off, like, oh, they got me.
Psych.
Didn't hold up.
I'm sticking with it.
All right, I'm sticking with Kundun.
All right.
Here we go.
1, 2, 3. Paper.
Scissors.
Oof.
All right, well, there you have it. Kundun is 220 out of 308. I think it's a strong film, but I don't have a problem with its ranking because it's not one that I would watch too often. How's that?
I actually, given our conversation, you said it. I don't hate the film. I was bored. I don't hate it. There is a lot going on in the film that's beautiful, and given the performances from Tibetan non-actors, gorgeous, fantastic. Work. It didn't come together as a whole for me, but I will take you up on this watch Kundun in 5 years test, and I'll let you know. I'm not going to watch it until then.
There you go. This is one, though, that I don't know if Criterion is able to get a hold of it, or I don't know if they're afraid of China and repercussions. Like, I wonder if Disney is just kind of keeping it under lock and key because they just have now had Shanghai Disneyland and they don't want anything to affect their business dealings. I'm just curious kind of what, if this will ever have life again, or if old DVD copies are really going to be the only way you can ever see it now.
Right. Curious.
Yeah.
What is this for your Letterboxd review?
This ended up at a 4-star for me. I found it to be quite a strong and powerful film, and I liked it.
Your feeling about the movie, as usual, is buoying my feelings about it. When I wrote my review of it's reasonably negative, focuses more on the boring part, and it was coming in at 2 stars. I think I'll give you a 2.5.
And is that a like?
No, it's not. It's not yet a like, Andy.
So how do we determine what that's going to be?
I think if it's just 2 of us and there's a like and a not like, it defaults to like.
Okay.
I think we should default optimistic.
So it'd only really be a not like if both of us didn't like it.
If both of us say that it's a not like, yeah, I think that's fair.
I am fine with that. So that puts it at 3.25 on our Letterboxd.
Now we are at the end of our Melissa Mathison series. It was a nice set of films, and we're moving on. The last film before our July break. What is that?
We've got our listener's choice episode. We're going to be talking to listener Nick Langdon from Down Under. And we're going to be talking about the one Edgar Wright film that has had a wide release that we have not yet talked about, Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Oh, I can't wait to talk about this. You've already watched it. I have not watched it again. I am so excited to do so.
It's a fun one.
It holds up well for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, good. Oh, what a relief. Until we get into that, Andy, I got to go to bed.
Okay. Well, I've got a couple beetles fighting in the yard. I've got to go separate them.
Amazon giveth, Andy.
As Amazon always doeth.
As we are wont to do, I didn't like the film as much, so I went for a 5-star Amazon review on my list, and I will deliver it to you now. A great movie that you will never forget. Over the last 30 years, I've seen bits of the movie, but too busy to sit and watch the 3-hour film. When I finally did, I was shocked how good it is and why I waited so long. I was 8 when it came out. The movie is so intense. The 3 hours fly by and leave you changed forever in some way after it. It's not for kids under 18, please. That cannot be expressed enough, as some scenes are extremely hard to watch. But you do, and you will always bond with others who love this poignant greatest movie of all time. To own it on Blu-ray is complete. Once again, you will be changed in some way after seeing it. 5 stars isn't enough.
Wow.
I know. That's exuberant.
That is very exuberant. Well, I've got a 1 star, not so exuberant, by Oklahoma Apache, who says, don't buy it. The movie was brooding, plotting, and boring, typical of the times. I think it was striving for deep and philosophical, but wound up being pathetic. Save your money.
Now, Andy, you will note that this film is not 3 hours long.
That's right.
It wasn't made 30 years ago.
That's right.
It wasn't even released on Blu-ray.
No, it wasn't.
Why are we reading these stupid reviews, Andy?
Because Amazon is dumb, Pete.
Amazon is so dumb, Andy.
That's right. They have all of the star ratings, except for one that we found.
Yeah.
All the star ratings, weirdly, are connected to the Deer Hunter.
For both of us, this is not an internet fluke. We are in different locations. If you go to the Kundun page right now, you will see that all the reviews but one are for the Deer Hunter. Ridiculous. This is, again, part of the Chinese-Tibet controversy and conspiracy that to this day is preventing reviewers from being able to review this film on Amazon.
So crazy.
Conspiracy. Thanks for nothing, Amazon. It is hard to believe that we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
Oh, I know, you're telling me. Producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great conversations.
In Season 6, our Disease Films series had adaptations like The Omega Man, based on I Am Legend, The Andromeda Strain, Children of Men, and Blindness.
I Am Legend is so much better than The Omega Man.
What about the Will Smith version?
Don't get me started.
For our This Is Real Life Jack series, we talked Black Hawk Down and Seabiscuit, some great true stories based on fantastic books.
And we had more listeners' choices like The Fly, The Emigrants, and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World.
You just did a series on The Fly on the Sitting in the Dark podcast. Did you read the original material?
Wasn't watching every Fly movie enough?
Our Big Betty Davis series featured adaptations like The Little Foxes, Now Voyager, All About Eve, and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane.
Are you calling Betty Davis big?
Only in personality and force.
She is a force to be reckoned with.
We talked about the entire The Godfather trilogy, of course. Iconic page to screen, even if it is just the one Mario Puzo book. I wonder if Coppola will ever make The Sicilian.
We also had some Zhang Yimou adaptations with Judo and Raise the Red Lantern. Absolutely gorgeous movies.
And don't forget the Hughes Brothers series with From Hell, based on the graphic novel. Brilliant material.
Kelly Reichardt gave us Wendy and Lucy and Certain Women, adapted from short stories.
Plus more Hayao Miyazaki as we tackled Howl's Moving Castle.
Find all these books and more at thenextreel.com/originals. Every purchase supports the show.
Get the full list of adapted films that we've covered at thenextreel.com/originals and start your next read today.